Welcome back to Playdelayplay and our first episode ever. On this channel, we're going to talk about everything that has to do with hard rock guitar, including, but not limited to, guitar effects, like delay, guitar amplifiers, and guitars. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Chibsons from a certain point of view.
Hello there.
Now, this point of view may not be yours, and it may not even be mine, because we are going to be playing the devil's advocate for one moment. If my point of view was that of Gibson corporate office, I would say that every single cut is a cheap imitation Les Paul. With that being said, let's look at some of these wonderful, terrible from this viewpoint, single cuts. Before we look at these single cuts, we're going to set some ground rules for what makes a genuine, authentic Gibson Les Paul. And as we all know, everything else is just an imitation, a counterfeit, or forevermore known as a Chibson. Alright, so rule number 1. All authentic Les Pauls have a body made out of mahogany, a mahogany neck, and a maple cap. This does not include any tummy cuts or comfort carves. This is a man's guitar, and it needs to weigh a lot. Rule number 2. All authentic Les Pauls have to have 1, 2, or 3 P90s or humbuckers. No single coils allowed. Rule number 3. All authentic Les Pauls have a 24.75 inch scale. What is 24.75 inch scale? It's the space between the nut all the way down the string to the bridge. Rule number 4. Authentic Les Pauls have a set neck. Rule number 5. Authentic Les Pauls never have a whammy bar, a Bigsby, or other sorts of trim. Rule number 6. Authentic Les Pauls are always made by Gibson in America. So now we have our 6 items that make up an authentic Les Paul. Pretty easy items, so let's compare them to some alternatives and see what makes or breaks something from being an authentic Les Paul. But first, let's take a look at our sponsored guitar gear. VultureKulture straps are high-quality leather straps with a legitimate hot rod culture vibe. If you want a high-quality strap that is a little off the beaten path, check out these designs. So we have our first contender. This first contender is a Fender Telecaster. I'm pretty sure this isn't a Gibson Les Paul, right? But what is it that makes it different? Well, let's start with the pickups. Definitely not humbuckers. Definitely made of the wrong type of wood. This is probably made of an ash. It's a bolt-on neck as opposed to a set neck. It's definitely not made in America. This is a Mexican Strat. So, even though it's a single cut, I guess the jury is going to rule that this is a Chibson. Our next contender is a PVSC3. Looks kind of like a Les Paul, right? But this is not authentic. We're going to find out that this is a Chibson. First off, it's made out of the wrong wood. It's made out of basswood. Even though it's fairly heavy, this guitar is not mahogany and maple. The neck is maple, but that should be mahogany in a Les Paul. Does have the 3 humbuckers, does have a 24.75 inch scale on the neck, has no whammy bar, and even has a nice chunky neck like a lot of Les Pauls have. The top is carved, which is a nice feature on high-end Les Pauls. However, this is made by PV in China. This is a Chibson. Our next contender is the EC1000, or the Eclipse from LTD. This guitar is from Korea, so you know what that means, right? It has modern features and traditional features. It has that set neck we're looking for, mahogany body, mahogany neck, and a maple top. There you go. It's more like a Les Paul. 24.75 inch scale, but this has 24 frets. It's a modern feature. Active high output EMG pickups. That's not typical for Les Pauls. Zakk Wylde has made great use of them, but they're just not standard. This particular guitar also has locking tuners. This guitar is not a Gibson, not made in the USA, and is a bit too modern for the purists. So the jury's gonna have to say, Chibson. This next guitar you're gonna tell me is not a single cut. And I think I'm gonna agree with you on that. However, this guitar, among all others, deserves the title of Les Paul Imposter. It's the SG. The SG was launched by Gibson in the early 1960s, kind of a relaunch for the Les Paul. It's lighter and more easily maneuverable, like a Strat. However, the man himself, Les Paul, was not very happy with this new design that he had not been consulted on. They had to take his name off it. And since then, it's been known as the SG. So despite all these similarities, the SG is gonna have to be a Chibson. Don't you agree? Rules are rules. What about this Gibson Nighthawk? Certainly this is a Les Paul. Ah, but now I see. The scale is that of a Fender guitar, 25.5 inch. The pickups are all wrong. Guess it's a Chibson, after all. Obviously a Chibson. Chibson, not authentic enough. Last but not least, we finally have our real, authentic Gibson Les Paul. Unfortunately, it's made out of the wrong wood. Therefore, by our rules, it's a Chibson. That being said, all of the guitars that we've covered today are great sounding guitars. So don't let a Gibson lawyer or a purist tell you otherwise. These guitars, when used properly, will sound amazing. I'd like to thank you for leaving this video on in the background while you did something else. It would mean a whole lot to me if you left a comment or even subscribed. That way I'll have more than one view on my second video, which is coming. As a matter of fact, I have plenty more pent up forum frustration and lots of gear acquisition syndrome that just needs to be let out. So, what are you waiting for?
Don't do that.